Welcome aboard. Our launch failed. Fix it. A Consultant's Tip by William J. Richette, 2. Have you ever started a new contract on the day of a project release? It was a Monday, my first day at one of the top 5 medical device companies named for the capital of Massachusetts. The client in trouble was the number 1 or 2 accounting company in the United States. I walked into a lobby that could have been a mall's foyer. There was greenery and trees everywhere, and I found the main desk tucked into a corner and told them my name. A manager with the group I was to report to met me at the front desk with a visitor's badge and brought me in. The air in the office was thick with tension. I have never seen so many people looking frantic and worried about figuring out a problem. They were IT project leads or researchers, but not programmers. They knew how to explain things and make charts and reports, but little else. The manager didn't want to look me in the eyes. He almost slouched as he led me to a desk. I had seen the stance of someone who received a hell of an ass chewing. Normally, I would go through some preliminaries, get my badge, and have coffee. The manager wasn't being rude. He was in shock as his ass was on the line. He signed into the previous consultant's computer and asked me to take a look. What was the main issue? I asked. Our approved QAT database and software failed in production, and we have no clue why, he replied, still not looking at me or anyone else. The original programmer and consultant had left with a 2-week notice 48 hours before. With any new start, I was nervous but determined. I knew there was always a solution to a database and programming problem, so I was not worried. I stood beside the manager while he launched the database's management studio. Looking out of the office windows, you could see trees and a long hallway. I was given a quick tour of the failing database and a list of errors they were having. He stood and beckoned me to sit. He looked at me as if the answer would magically appear. Give me some time to look things over, I said calmly, smiling. It will get figured out. My manager smiled weakly and walked away. At this point in my career, I have been working on databases for 15 years. I knew what it was like to review 2 or 3 dozen errors and reach a conclusion that should never have happened. I felt like I'd seen this before. I knew what the rest of the team did not. I let everyone stew while I confirmed the problem. I had a call to make to the DBA assigned to this project. I ran to another of the managers at a solo desk, made my manners, and received the number. I dialed the number and waited for 2 rings. IT. Did you turn it off and on? The voice said. I laughed. It was true. Who is this? I said, chuckling. Charlie, how can I help? Told him my name and what I was doing there. He said it was his project, and he was happy to help a fellow engineer rather than a clerk who kicked out their plug. Did the QAT system work without fail? I asked. It did, and still does, he replied. Normally, TVA at a large company doesn't understand the problem because they have to manage dozens of databases and servers. I was always sympathetic and did my best to aid their work and not make any complaints. I have a hunch why this failed. Could you please tell me the version the COT database was built on, and then give me the version of the production database? I could hear him going to town on his keyboard and heard a loud sound. Shit, why did they do that to me? The DBA asked. Many DBAs don't set up servers in large organizations. There's a separate team for installations, networking, security, etc. When this DBA was assigned these servers to monitor, the team responsible didn't check the versions. To show you an example, I have posted 2 of my databases without showing anything pertinent. The QAT's database was built on a higher version than production. The production database had already been established for a long time, but was of a lower version, and it had less memory and CPU than the COT. The previous programmer used the latest technology well and was not responsible for production failure. He probably got sign-offs from management and directors. He walked out of this project with lots of kudo, happy faces, a bunch of attaboys, and a signed timesheet. The project manager and the project architect failed to ensure all levels. DEV, QAT, and prod were the same version, and that any differences in CPU and memory had a sliding scale upward to prod, or were made equal. Thanks for looking, Charlie. Will you figure out if I have to code the errors to the older version, or can we deploy to another server? I said, and hung up. My new manager came back from a meeting, and I told him what had happened. The company had done too much work on the older version server, and he asked if I could code it down. I would have to program that piece to the lower version for every error found. It was a slight mess, and I mentioned fixing all the bugs could take a week. It took 3 days. 14 bugs had easy solutions if you knew them. Despite the setback, he was relieved to hear it, and we went for coffee. The point is to look for a root cause when everything is great in your QAT environment. The database system is the building. The database is a house with many rooms. The building was locked because the tenants had old keys to get in. I heard apologies were made because the company who hired all of us owned that part. Think of problems like this. If you entered a building that had the lights off when they should have been lit generously, would you go to your office to find the problem? You would see if anything worked in the lobby or hallway. Would you call public service or check the fuses or breakers? If you are still awake, give us a like and subscribe.